I begin each year of youth ministry by brainstorming with the youth groups what topics they would like to discuss throughout the year. And our first class we did this, and one of the very first topics that came up was, what does it mean to be a good Christian? Well, I thought this was such a great topic that we would discuss it the next class. So our second class was the topic of what does it mean to be a good Christian? And we brainstormed ideas about what this might mean to be a good follower of Christ. And that brainstorming is on the Raven Foundation website. You can go check it out. It's under lesson plans. All of our ideas are there along with the lesson plan. So if you're interested, go check it out. But what I wanted to do was relate this to, there's a section in the gospel stories where it talks about this topic. What does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be great? The disciples are arguing while they're walking along with Jesus about who among them is the greatest, who's the best. And Jesus overhears this, doesn't say anything to them while they're walking along. But later on, he asks them, what were you arguing about while we were walking along? And they're quiet. They know that they've been caught. And this is so genius that it's in the gospel stories, because we all have this competition about being the best. This is what it means to be good. Who is the greatest among you, right? And middle school kids and high school kids are trained to have this competition. We train them to see who has the greatest grades, who has the most extracurricular activities, who's the best basketball player or football player, who's the best at debate, right? I mean, we train kids to have this mentality, this competition to be the best. And this is what the disciples are going through as well. I mean, we have this in the adult world too. It's not hard to see. So what Jesus is trying to do is bring this out into the open. He calls them on it. He says, you have been arguing about whom amongst you is the greatest. That's not what this is about. This isn't about all the accolades, all the prestige that you can gain for yourself. If you decide to follow me, it's not about that. It's about serving others. Jesus responds to them and says, if you want to be the first, you must serve others. This is total transformation of where the disciples are at in their lives. They want all the prestige. They want all the accolades. Jesus says, no, if you want to be first, go out and serve others. And so Jesus is challenging us with this message too today. Jesus then goes on to make this point. He brings a child in their midst. And the Gospel of Mark says that Jesus puts his arm around this child. He embraces this child and says, anyone who embraces me embraces a child like this. And what does this mean? Well, in the first century context, children were often seen as a burden to culture. Until they were able to be old enough to help provide for their family, they were seen as another mouth to feed, a burden. And so when Jesus says, if you embrace me, you embrace this child, Jesus is saying, embrace me and you embrace everyone in the world, even people who you see as a burden. Transform this desire to be the greatest amongst you into a desire to serve, into a desire to care for even the least of these, the children among you. This is what it means to be great according to Jesus. Not a competition, but an act of service, an act of love towards people. So I think this is what Jesus is getting at, what it means to be great. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What does this mean for our culture today? It's also what we discussed. In the church culture, oftentimes middle school kids especially are seen as other, seen as strange, right? They're in this really awkward phase of their life. And at coffee hour after the church service, right, the middle school kids are over here, the adults are over here. There's kind of this separation between them. What do you do? What would it look like if a pastor came in, stood up on a chair during coffee hour and said, okay, everybody, let's mingle together. Let's consciously mingle together. Let's consciously talk to one another, share experiences with one another. Don't treat one another as a burden, as this awkward phase in your life. Embrace it. Do what Jesus does. Embrace one another. Embrace these children amongst you. So I think that's what Jesus is trying to get at, to bring these awkward moments in our lives out in the open and saying, embrace one another. So those are my thoughts on what it means to be good, this competition that often arises over who's the greatest among us, and Jesus trying to transform that into an act of service towards one another, loving one another. So let me know your thoughts. Bye.